Suddenly, Jake was pulled into the water by his distressed dog. Completely unprepared for this unintended dive, he had no idea that this would lead him to an astonishing discovery that would turn his world upside down. Swimming behind his dog, he could not fathom what lurked beneath the murky waters of the lake that would forever alter his perception. Jake Thompson's serene morning by Willow Lake was interrupted when he found himself rescuing his typically composed golden retriever, Max, off the deck. One moment he was absorbing the beauty of the morning fog over the water, and the next he was immersed in its chilly depths. The unexpected cold jolted him, leaving him breathless and bewildered. As he emerged gasping for air, this extraordinary circumstance made him reflect on a defining moment from 3 years prior, which had led him to a crossroads in his life. Back then, he was a prosperous engineer-coder in Seattle, slowly drowning in the mundanity of coding and meetings. The burdens of his life felt troublesome, and he yearned for unpredictability, much like the situation he found himself in. "Max, what in the world?" Jake resurfaced, coughing out lake water. His dog was frantically swimming a few yards away, whimpering and barking more persistently than ever before. His usually placid brown eyes mirrored fear. Ears pinned back, he continued to move away from the shore. Confused and struggling in the water, Jake tried to comprehend the situation. The splashes and Max's desperate cries shattered the morning stillness. He struggled to understand what could have caused such an unexpected reaction from his loyal friend. In the 3 years they had resided by the lake, Max had never acted this way. This reminded Jake of when he had found Max. The lean, unkempt golden retriever had entered Jake's life during their initial walks by the lake. He had looked as lost as Jake felt after leaving Seattle. When Jake encountered the neglected dog, it seemed as if the missing pieces of his puzzle had come together. Max became his steady companion as he embarked on a renewed life filled with long strolls, swims, and peaceful solitude. But now Jake found himself in the cold lake, watching Max swimming determinedly toward the center. A realization dawned upon him that his life at Willow Lake was about to take another turn. The dog, which symbolized his renewed beginnings, was leading him into uncharted territory. There was something in the dark depths, something capable of shaking everything up again. "Come this way, lad," beckoned Jake, his tone registering both worry and puzzlement. Yet Max paid him no mind, persisting in his swimming towards the very heart of the lake. Max's barks escalated in urgency, their growing desperation sending a chill down Jake's spine. It was becoming apparent that Max was endeavoring to convey something, reveal a secret only a dog could detect. Jake paused momentarily, contemplating his next move. The shore was close, and his rational instincts urged him to swim back, find dry land, and seek assistance. Yet seeing Max, who was the personification of resolve, even in the face of danger, Jake couldn't abandon his friend. The terror in Max's eyes, so at odds with his typically easygoing disposition, made the choice for him. Taking a deep breath, Jake followed Max. As they distanced themselves further from the shore, the fog began to build, blocking Jake's view of the lake. His cozy cabin, typically nestled amidst evergreens, faded into the white fog. The water grew colder, seeping into Jake's attire and sending a chill straight to his marrow. A chilling silence took over the lake, punctuated only by Max's whimpering and the sound of splashing water. The further they went, the more Jake began to question his decision. The cold and strain were taking a toll on his muscles, and an unsettling feeling of stepping into the unknown prevailed. Still, he felt a forceful need to continue, a cocktail of worry for Max coupled with rising anticipation that they were on the brink of discovering something extraordinary. Unanticipatedly, Max ceased his swimming and started to thrash about in the water, his gaze locked on something beneath the surface. Jake arrived at Max's side and extended a hand to grab hold of his collar. Max, however, slipped past him, his body convulsing and trembling, either from stress or fear. Jake was left wondering. "What's happening, lad? What can you see?" Jake's voice came out low, almost as a whisper, as if a louder tone might disrupt whatever had caught Max's attention. He began scanning the surface of the water for any signs of what could possibly be distressing his companion. The lake seemed at peace, with only minor ripples coursing through as they shifted positions. Jake squinted into the depths, trying to discern what had distressed his faithful friend. Typically transparent enough to allow visibility several feet below, the lake now appeared dark and menacing. The undulation from their activity distorted the perspective, making it hard to concentrate on any single point. The first light of day, piercing through the fog, cast a mythical luminescence on the water's surface. Initially, he saw shadows and sporadic movements that looked like fish, but as his eyes adjusted to the semi-darkness, outlines began to take shape beneath him. It wasn't distinct, rather a shadowy spot in the murky water than an identifiable object, yet it was certainly present. Jake blinked repeatedly, questioning if his eyes were deceiving him in the faint light. His pulse began to race, a cocktail of fear and thrill overwhelming him. There underneath was something large and unusual. It glided not like a fish or any other aquatic creature he was aware of. It was an entirely distinct entity. The form seemed too well-defined, too consistent to be natural. Jake's interest piqued. He inhaled deeply and plunged into the water. The cold stung his eyes as he made an effort to keep them open, staring into the obscurity in search of the enigmatic shape. As he delved deeper, the pressure in his ears heightened and the water dimmed. The weight of his damp clothes pulled him down, making every motion laborious. Just when he was about to give up and head to the surface, his hand brushed against something solid and smooth. The unforeseen contact sent a thrill through Jake's body, a blend of shock and excitement. The burn in his lungs was intense, but he persisted, determined to investigate further. He explored the object with his hands, trying to estimate its size and form. The object turned out to be more extensive than his initial assumption, with pointed edges and a cool metallic exterior. He began considering plausible situations. Could it be fragments of an old ship? Maybe a submerged structure or something even more mysterious? The necessity for air became critical, and Jake reluctantly withdrew from the object and swam back to the surface. He emerged from the water struggling for breath. Max was still there, paddling in the water, watching him closely, as though expecting Jake to validate something the dog seemed to sense. As they paddled back, the cold, logical part of Jake's mind, honed over years of tackling complicated coding challenges, started to break down the situation into manageable pieces. Once ashore, Jake quickly dried off and donned fresh clothes. The inviting warmth of the cabin sharply contrasted with the coolness from the lake as he shivered. The adrenaline from his morning exploration started to recede. Max shook himself energetically, spraying water droplets everywhere before curling up next to the bagels near the fireplace. Perplexing questions and possibilities churned in Jake's mind. He was clueless about what he had found, how long it had been there, and above all, what he was to do with it. Jake spent the remainder of the day delving into the history of Willow Lake, hunting for any lead about what might be concealed in its depths. His expertise came in handy as he scoured through online archives, historical websites, and discussions on area-dedicated forums. He wasn't certain what he was searching for. Maybe a clue, an indication of what lay beneath the lake's surface. The prospect of what he might discover kept him glued, unwilling to let it go. As he dug deeper into the lake's past, he stumbled upon a long-forgotten legend passed down through generations. There were obscure mentions of an unexplained event during the Civil War, something about a shipment from Georgia that never reached its destination. Many accounts lacked definitive clues and details, attributing it to town folklore, tales cities usually tell to captivate tourists. But as Jake picked apart the scattered narratives, a pattern began to surface. The legend hinted at Confederate soldiers smuggling something of great value, something they tried earnestly to hide. The specifics were hazy, distorted by time. Jake, however, couldn't shake the sense that some semblance of truth lurked in this myth. He leaned back in his chair and ran a hand through his tousled hair, pondering potential scenarios. Could what he found in the lake be linked to this old folk tale? This thought both thrilled and rattled him. If there was even a trace of veracity in this tale, it could denote that he had chanced upon revolutionary historical evidence. As evening drew close, casting lengthy shadows over the lake, Jake sauntered onto his porch. Beside him stood Max. Stretched before them lay the lake, calm and harmless, illuminated in the rays of the descending sun. It was challenging to imagine that such a tranquil place could house such mysteries. That night, Jake had fitful slumber. His dreams swarmed with visions of submerged treasures and ominous figures from history. The break of dawn saw him waking up early, eager to revisit the lake and continue his investigation. However, he realized he needed to be well prepared this time. Taking a short journey to town, he acquired a pair of shatter-resistant goggles and a resilient underwater flashlight, gear that would significantly assist in his aquatic expeditions. He was resolute to unveil the secrets under the water, even if that involved encountering the obscure and unknown. Over the following days, Jake made multiple dives to the place where he had initially discovered the strange object. With each underwater voyage, he was able to examine more, methodically understanding the shape and size of the hidden entity. Arriving at his fifth dive, Jake felt more magnetized and apprehensive compared to previous encounters. Earlier dives only revealed brief glimpses of the object, a few rigid surfaces here, a sharp angled corner there. But the cloudy waters posed a shield around its full distinctiveness, cloaking it in enigma. Ruins. This time, Jake was relentless to discover more. As he reached nearer to the lakebed, the glow from his flashlight invaded the water surface, illuminating the shadowy shapes beneath. His heartbeat rose as the light identified a metallic, muted yellow item, something new and previously unseen. Jake could feel his heart thumping hard as he swam closer, contemplating various theories. The elusive object seemed partly buried under silt and plant life, clouding its full appearance. But as he swept the detritus, a more precise image materialized. His gloved fingers lightly felt the metal borders, registering the sharp corners along with the cold, smooth texture that appeared alien in this natural atmosphere. His breathing became uneven and irregular. His actions turned rushed as he incessantly worked on, showing signs of impatience to know what it was. The object was gigantic, roughly the size of a trunk, with a lid that seemed bolted with an archaic rusted lock. The flashlight revealed details on the surface, displaying complex carvings, almost hidden under layers of decayed time. Then as he cleared another batch of mud, he noticed it. Metal rods, their surfaces faintly glistening under the limited light. Jake froze for a tantalizing moment, refusing to trust his eyes. Could it be real? With hands shaking with anticipation and nervousness, he moved one rod aside, taken aback by its massive weight. He flipped it in his hand, the flashlight exposing a gold-like color and texture. Jake anxiously sought to understand what he was clutching. The chunk was hefty, much heavier than he had anticipated, and its exterior bore faint stamps and carvings, possibly signaling its source or voyage. It was an unfamiliar metal that, upon closer inspection, turned out to be gold. Lustrous, pure gold. This awareness hit him like a giant wave, nearly submerging him. It was the treasure, long lost beneath Willow Lake, that had evaded many seekers before him, and he had uncovered it. However, as he comprehended the magnitude of his find, it dawned on him what it signified. This was not just a simple find, it was a historical artifact from a time long ago, with all the significance and responsibility it bore. Right then, Jake realized his life was about to take a turn. The tranquil, humble life he had built around Willow Lake was on the verge of a massive transformation. The responsibility of this discovery weighed on him, equal to the gold chunk he held. Jake knew he could not hide this historical discovery. Its significance required him to inform the relevant officials. But a small part of him, one he wasn't proud of, wondered what if he didn't share his discovery and kept the gold to himself. He quickly brushed aside that idea. Jake knew that the right thing to do was report his find, but not before documenting everything. With his vintage digital camera in hand, he painstakingly photographed every inch of the gold chunk from every angle, immortalizing its carvings and stamps. He then swathed the gold chunk in a soft fabric and securely stored it inside a miniature safe in his cabin. The subsequent weeks were bustling. Jake shared news of his discovery with local officials, who relayed the message to state and federal agencies. Soon, the peaceful Willow Lake was alive with archaeologists, historians, and government representatives. Jake actively participated and collaborated with the research team, offering his local knowledge about the lake and possible locations of other submerged treasure items. As he watched divers emerge with fresh gold chunks daily, the pile of treasure steadily grew. The thrill was infectious, each new discovery drawing gasps from the team present. Through painstaking reconstruction, the researchers confirmed that the discovered gold was indeed part of the Confederate cargo, which was being transported northward in 1863. Speculated to be a hefty amount, this gold was supposedly for financing covert operations in Union territory. However, the plot by the Confederates fell apart when the Union learned of the shipment. In a desperate bid to keep the gold away from Union grasp, Confederate troops hid the treasure, and it was never seen again. As the years rolled by, the tale of the lost Confederate gold evolved into a local legend, murmured among citizens in the town's only diner. Some say they've spotted spectral figures roaming the edges of Willow Lake on dark nights, eternally pursuing treasures they're fated to never find. Others recount a peculiar glow in the water, or a spooky sensation that something of value, yet accursed, lies submerged. Occasionally, adventurers would be lured by the prospect of wealth, but always departed empty-handed. Until now. Jake found himself in the media's spotlight. Journalists from around the nation descended upon Willow Lake, anxious to speak with the man who had unearthed the long-lost cache. Jake, not used to such commotion, was often overwhelmed. He longed for the peaceful days when only he and Max reveled in the serenity by the lake. Nonetheless, amid all the confusion, Jake experienced a sense of accomplishment. He had unearthed a historical artifact that would enrich our comprehension of the past. The gold bars, closely examined and logged, would eventually be displayed in museums for future generations. As the recovery operations continued, the last gold piece was pulled from its aquatic hideout. The edges of Willow Lake soon reverted to their typical tranquility. In due course, Jake was permitted to retain a substantial share of the gold for his efforts. The government claimed the remainder and presented it in museums, revealing the lake's secretive past. Suddenly, Jake found himself prosperous beyond his wildest dreams. With his unexpected wealth came possibilities he had never envisioned. He could voyage across the globe, return to the bustling city, or acquire a luxurious estate wherever he fancied. But while standing on the veranda of his modest home, Max resting by his feet, with the twilight sky over Willow Lake as a backdrop, he realized he had all he ever wanted. Rather than radically altering his lifestyle, Jake chose to utilize his wealth to contribute back to the community that was now his home. He established a program to conserve Willow Lake and its neighboring wilderness, enabling future generations to cherish its beauty just as he had. One late afternoon, while seated on the wooden platform gazing at Max heartily frolicking in the water, Jake reminisced about the unusual trajectory his life had taken. From being a tired city dweller, he had morphed into a satisfied lake inhabitant, and presently into an unforeseen treasure seeker turned environment guardian. The journey had been unanticipated, packed with surprises he could never have predicted. He grinned, thinking back to how it all started with Max pulling him into the lake that dewy morning. "Good dog, diligent Max," he remarked, patting the dog on the neck. The ultimate treasure finder one could ever envision. With a fulfilled exhale, Jake moved into his cabin, with Max trailing closely behind. The next day would herald new expeditions, new tests, and new chances to value the lifestyle he had discovered here at Willow Lake. Regardless of what occurred, he was prepared to confront it bravely with his faithful partner alongside him, guiding him through the teachings of the lake. Have you ever had a moment that completely altered the path of your life, similar to Jake's revelation at Willow Lake? How would you react if you were in Jake's position? Would you broadcast it or maintain secrecy? Share your thoughts and experiences in the response section below, and thank you for joining us on this thrilling adventure.